I'm really honored to be here. I've been admiring the work that Montgomery College has been doing, the Innovation Works program. I love the catchphrase, think and do tank. I wish I'd thought of that. I think it's perfect. The work that we're doing in partnership with Montgomery College through the ACES program at the Universities of Shady Grove, all tremendous innovative kinds of work that you all are engaged in at this institution that frankly is helping to serve as a model for the ways in which we ought to be adapting higher education in order to address our students' needs and our changing student population. I happened to look up and see this sign. Suddenly it felt a little bit like a metaphor to me of where higher education is these days right now. That in fact, at least in my experience at a private institution as a faculty member, we pretty much had our heads down, weren't thinking much about what was happening to our students, what our completion rates looked like, what happened to them on graduation, how accessible our programs were to a variety of students. And in fact, we needed to be thinking more seriously about these things. In fact, what's happened recently for higher education is sort of like that big red sign has been thrust upon us, and rightly so, we're being asked to be held accountable for all of those access, affordability, and completion kinds of priorities. Let's talk first about this kind of global look at these practical problems. This is sometimes called the iron triangle. You're probably somewhat familiar with it, in which we have issues of affordability. So we know tuition continues to rise. We're all of us facing in the state of Maryland and other places budget cuts. We're all trying to deal with how to keep college affordable while at the same time delivering quality services. Access and outcomes came up at the same time. Access, of course, is about trying to make sure that this changing population, particularly the aging population of students that we're seeing in our classes, can actually access the courses when they need to be able to access them. And of course, outcomes, are we completing students? Are we in fact helping them succeed in the ways in which they want to succeed as a result of our programs? The problem with this iron triangle, and the reason it's called that, is that it has been very difficult in the past to increase all three of these areas simultaneously. So for example, when you make college more accessible, often you're either losing out a little bit on quality or you're actually increasing the costs. When you increase outcomes, usually that's at the expense of more services. So it's very difficult to say we're going to raise all three of these things up at the same time without one of them being affected. The second big area that I think holds great promise is open anything, open educational resources. I think that if education is going to be about sharing, and in fact the best educators are the ones that share with their students most completely, then we have to move to open environments. This really is a necessary thing. The technology, the internet, all these sorts of things have made sharing so much easier. We now can share digital copies of things, whereas before we had to go to a library, and if you took it off the shelf, you couldn't have it after I took it off the shelf. You'd wait for me to give it back. So the technology is making sharing so much more possible, but copyright gets in our way. These locked down courses get in our way. So I think I view open as potentially a super affordance in the way in which we're thinking about trying to address the iron triangle problems.
Every learner, right, that goes through K-12, K-16 and beyond needs to have a sense of agency to change the world in which they live, not just exist in it. And I think we're falling a little bit short or headed that direction. What can we do to reignite learners' curiosity and wonder? Because I want the learners in my classroom to be engaged. Those are the moments, right, that we should try to be doing. And I want to, when students blow me out of the way with, how did you get there? Tell me that. Say more about that. Whoa. That, I want to model that and experience that with them rather than deliver content. You have to be inspired to make the change because it's work and it's hard. But that's what we do. We have a responsibility to our learners, and it's our job. We can lean forward all in, hands on, you know, minds on, hearts all in, and we really need to do that. Jesse Stumble says, you don't need new technology to change your teaching, you need a new you. And this is the part I want to talk about. What is that kind of open, vulnerable, right, the power of vulnerability? And Jose Bowen says we need to model changing our minds for students. When you say, I hadn't thought that, that new evidence means we'd go this direction, or you model that for them because they don't see that otherwise. All right. All right, so adaptive teaching means an agent of emergent possibility. Whew. I'm not a deliverer of content at students. I work with them as an agent of emergent possibility. I love this film because Michael Morantz has mashed up a wonderful collection of contemporary things to remind us why we have to shift this paradigm. Active learning. This is our and their future, and there isn't a multiple choice Scantron out there. They'll have 14 different jobs, some of them not invented, right? They have to be lifelong learners, and we're not helping them get there enough.
Climate change,
deadly earthquake,
a suicide bomber,
terrorism,
nuclear device in the heart of the nation's capital.
It's no wonder that we're pessimistic. It's no wonder that people think that the world is getting worse. But perhaps that's not the case.
Perhaps we forget that we've only just begun.
Doing what's never been done before is intellectually seductive, whether or not we deem it practical.
What we're seeing is unfathomably new possibilities all of a sudden becoming available to us.
The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave.
You have to trust in something. Your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever.
We truly are living in an extraordinary time, and many people forget this.
So now technically your device is on. Can you tell? Can you hear me?
The yearning to do what we do in the service of something larger than ourselves.
Where did we come from? Are we alone in the universe? What is the future of the human race?
When you conduct those exercises, innovation follows just as day follows night.
We can do this. I know we can because we've done it before.
Stay hungry, stay foolish.
How do we assess inner troublemakers? What evidence do we use for success?
When you're going against the grain and someone says, that's not the way we do it here, you know. You're an inner troublemaker, yes, come out. and cherish those moments, because, you know, mostly, I just read this great piece. Yana Lambrini, a colleague of mine, sent me this article on safe spaces versus brave spaces in diversity and inclusion issues on higher ed. Wow. Because we talk about the classroom as a safe space. Well, yes and. I'm not into binaries. It's a yes and. It needs to be a safe learning environment, and this is where we are trained. It's our job to push them with all the compassionate engagement and push ourselves. And when they see that, they step up and be their best selves. So I think we know it when we see it. And sadly, we often catch ourselves when we realize I'm flatlining, metaphorically. You know, I'm just going along, get along, I'm doing my job, I don't get a raise for this, no one cares, please don't bother me, then don't teach. Because it's an active verb, and we really need to embrace that, I think. I know you're the folks who all embrace your inner troublemaker. So let's do that together and make a change.